Coming to you live from the Business RadioX studio in Woodstock, Georgia, this is Fearless Formula with Sharon Klein. And welcome to Fearless Formula on Business RadioX, where we talk about the ups and downs of the business world and offer words of wisdom for business success. I am your host, Sharon Klein, and today's a little bit of a different take. It's not so much business as it is a personal life experience. We have in the studio Ken Kraus. He is the author of the book A Marine Endures Hell, the first Marine held hostage in Iran during the Iranian hostage crisis of 1979, and the publisher of his book, who's a repeat person here on the show, Constance Payne. She is an actor, a forensics cleaner, and an entrepreneur here in Atlanta. Welcome, Ken and Constance, to the show.
Hello,
Hey. Hey.
Hi, Sharon.
Hi. Thank you so much for being willing to come in, and your book has just been published this past week, and it's a whole new venture for you in the publishing world. So I'm very excited to talk to you about how important this book is, not only just for the publishing experience and Constance involvement with you, but just reliving and talking about how the experiences that you had while being held prisoner and how this has affected your life long term. It's so fascinating to me and important because you have a perspective on different events that have happened all around the world that people don't have if they haven't been through what you have. So do you mind if I kind of get started a little bit in the beginning of when you were a sergeant in the Marines?
No, ma'am, go ahead.
Okay. So you were 22 years old. You were a sergeant in the U.S. Marine Corps. You were sent from the embassy in Cyprus. You were sent to Tehran, and you were going to be helping support the Marine detachment in Tehran.
That's correct.
And then on Valentine's Day, 1979, in the morning, there was a siege. Can you talk about what happened? And I don't know how much detail you'd like to go into, but please feel free to take it from there.
Yeah, basically we had gone on a 24-hour, shall we say, patrol or alert status. We realized that because so many Americans were getting brought back onto the embassy and the consulate to be evacuated out of the country, it put a lot of stress upon the embassy personnel, which were already down to a skeleton crew anyway for what they need working. Very similar about what's going on over in the Middle East now, in Gaza and Israel, where they're pulling people out. But when you put that many people through the ringer of the red tape that it takes to get out of the country and to wait around it really is a security nightmare. For terrorists or anybody, it just gives them a hard target and a soft target, to focus on. So, with that being said, it was the Shah had just left the country, Shah Reza Pahlavi, and now that the Ayatollah Khomeini was coming back in, there was a vacuum there in the political world. So what was happening is that really nobody had a handle on what was going on, who was going to take over, this new type of regime. It's a theocracy, which, nobody's ever seen before. Remember, this is only 1979. This is just barely 5 years after Saigon, I mean, it's American military, wasn't looking upon with a lot of the prestige they are today. And the Vietnam veterans that came back, they weren't honored the way they should have for their service. So we've seen that, and so people today, 44 years ago, people couldn't even find Iran or Iraq on the map. I mean, people couldn't, they didn't even have operational maps at times. You take a look at it, and it looks like this the desk here, it's all one color because it's a sandbox over there.
Middle East.
Yeah, that's the way that is, and if it wasn't for the satellite, navigations and the type of communications, it's hard to even find out where you're going there. So, especially if it's not your embassy, and I was sent from Nicosia, Cyprus, to try to fit us in with another detachment, even is a kind of a sideways show to begin with. So, with that being said, we knew within about 24 hours ahead of time something was brewing, and because we've had riots before, we'd have thousands of students, demonstrators, anti-Shah or pro-Khomeini, whatever which way you want to look at it, start over in the giant soccer stadium. And this would be 20, 30,000 people, okay? This isn't just, downtown, a couple hundred people. You're talking thousands of people.
You said in the book that you had a feeling something was wrong that day.
Absolutely, because this The night before, the post that I was standing is a very restricted area on the back of the embassy, and not very many people allowed to use it to come through there. Anyway, that morning when I had gotten off of duty, something seemed strange because I noticed that there wasn't the Farsi police officers that are normally out there. You take a look at the embassies in Washington, D.C., you'll see just outside the embassies that they have GSA or regular police. They're not the same police officers that are in the Washington.
Like at the White House or whatever.
Yeah, at the White House. So when I saw that they weren't there that morning when I got off, I was thinking, it's not a special day. It might be Valentine's Day, but not in a Muslim country here. I mean, what's up with that? Didn't think much of it until I got my relief came. I gave them the brief, and then I went back to the Marine House. Actually, I had gotten off and I had some breakfast at the Caravanserai restaurant. And then shortly after that, I went back to the Marine House, and I was going to get some sleep. And I mean, I was just
all hell broke loose,
dead ass tired. And it was cold that night. It's February up there in the Ellsberg Mountains. It's a really cold area. And I remember basically taking my gear off and getting ready to hit the rack. And I just started to hear gunfire. And I know that since the State Department had taken away the Marines' M16s, our automatic weapons, and he'd given us shotguns. So we raised hell about that, but for the most part, we worked for the State Department. So, for whatever their security generation generic terms are going to be for whatever their threat assessment is, we basically got to go with it. And so I'm saying, these shotguns aren't really good for, more than about 50 yards.
Yeah,
and
those are close range weapons.
Absolutely. And you're talking about a 27-acre compound, with different buildings in it. So I'm wondering what, drastic asinine thinking this is coming up, because it's not very tactical at all, give or take that. So when the firing first started, we were wondering where it was small arms fire, and we recognized that, pistols basically. Then we heard rifle fire. Now, since we didn't have rifles, we were wondering, and the loud crack of a rifle so close, you're wondering, who's got the rifles? It wasn't the Marines. Then we heard the radio traffic come across. They're coming over the wall. They're coming over the wall. I'm taking inbound. I'm taking in fire. Request permission to fire back. And I know who it was. It was Corporal Downey at the front gate, where there's 3 Marines at the main gate, and they're just being overrun. And then it went from rifle fire to sustained automatic weapons fire. So now you're in a full bore firefight. So.
And if you guys want to know more about the firefight, you'll have to buy the book.
I love you, Constance, because to me, it's like, of course, I want to hear and know more, but that's why you have a book. So one of the quotes that you have in the book is that during the gunfight, that it was both terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. Can you describe to me why that is? I mean, I know that you're trained military to defend and fight, but to have that reality of it happening at you at that moment, what was that like?
I think Sharon, I think what happens is that while we were in that firefight with the attackers that were there, they had the range of fire, the rate of fire. They had the high ground on us, and we were outmanned, outgunned, outranged. They had everything in their favor. Element of surprise. They had taken over control of our radios, so we were basically incommunicado. And the building where myself and the other 2 Marines was the Caravanserai restaurant, and that's where we kind of held up like an Alamo. And holding up there, it's just a matter of time before when they come in that they know there's just somebody in that building, And then once they try to get through the building, that's where our little individual firefight, along with all the main other little firefights, are going on at the Chancery Building, the Charge d'Affaires House, all the different little buildings that were there.
And this was the first firefight you'd ever been in as a Marine. Before then, it was just training.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess that would be the exhilarating part, that like all your training had kind of stirred up to this. I mean, nobody wants to be in a firefight.
Of course.
Absolutely. But you were ready for it.
So to balance what you're going to say, I think where it comes from, and I've thought about this, but you don't think about that over the years. I didn't think about it at the time. But where your training comes back in, where your tactics are where your marksmanship and being alert, make sure nobody's taking a bead on you, or you're not getting shot at. You're more worried about a ricochet or something. But the exhilarating part of it is that you are in a fight that you want to win, and the only way you're going to win that is if you stay in it. And when you have bullets shot at you that miss you and hit everything around you, and when you shoot back and you hit somebody, you hit another human being, it's a sword that's got a double edge to it.
You had said in the book, if violence is the process that our enemies have chosen to negotiate with, then I say let's give them all that they want. Because that's what they're negotiating. That's their terms.
Yeah, because what's the other choice? Die?
You have to fight. You have to fight.
There's no diplomacy there. Even though it's a diplomatic mission, it goes out the window as soon as somebody starts, raking you with automatic fire with intent to kill you.
Yeah,
changes
absolutely.
things.
What are you going to do?
Yeah.
So you were in. Do you mind if I talk a little bit about the next step? So you were in the firefight. You were taken hostage. And you were held hostage 7 days, is that right?
8 days.
8 days.
Yes, ma'am.
So some of the descriptions of what you experienced and what you witnessed are just unbelievable to me. And I was thinking about just myself, I can't stand to see anything suffer. I don't know, animals, nothing. But what would have happened to me, or just an average person, to witness, not even to yourself, you're suffering in your own way, physically, but to watch someone suffer and be tortured right in front of you, and have that in your psychology. You can't not see all of this. What effect did that have on you?
Well, to back it up a little bit, the initial part of it is when, shall we say, we had about 20 Americans that were non-combatants, and they were basically stuck there with us at the restaurant. Long story short, once the terrorists knew that they were in there and they wanted them,
yes,
and they tried to come through the doors, that's what started the fight. Okay, we exchanged fire back and forth, and it's just a matter of time before they were going to overrun us. We're just running out of bullets. It's getting down, and we knew that you want to think about something that. In hand-to-hand combat, what we call cold steel, you got to sit there and think about, I'm going to have to take a knife, a K-bar, a Marine, and I'm got to stick it in somebody with direct intent to take their life. And, of course, if it gets down to that, and, so that's your first reality is that how close is this going to be? And then you realize that once they get through us, these Americans are going to be
slaughtered.
Slaughtered. They're at their mercy. And so they're your charge.
Yes.
So when it comes down to it, and I talk in the book about the miracle.
Yes.
That first miracle is that if I had not gotten lucky, or a miracle hadn't happened, that I got that guy, I captured him basically in the window.
Yes.
And thank God he decided to want to live that day, and I wasn't going to shoot him, because if it went any other way, I shoot him, then we're just back to square one. So with that, it was able to get those 22 workers safe and out of there.
For you.
But to bring up where the first amount of what you're talking about, shock and trauma, was that morning that my friend, the waiter Minacci,
yes,
had
we'll have to read more of that.
In the book.
Yeah,
talk about that. Yeah.
And when he dies in my arms, he steps in front of me and he dies in my arms. I mean, that's the first
trauma. You had known him for a while and had been so kind to you.
And I just had breakfast with him. Mm-hmm. And then to get beat down like I did before I was taken out and then shot. Now, once you're shot, I don't know what happened. I mean, nobody knows till this day. I'm taken off the compound.
And how confusing it is, because there are moments where you're actually having some kindness happen to you, and then moments where it's completely taken away. How confusing and disorienting that must be.
Yeah, it started off as a regular day, and then everything changed for him.
Yes. You say that, so President Carter was able to negotiate your release.
So I was told.
So you were told. You say, and that leads me to the next part, that there's a disparity between the media account of what was happening and what was really happening. Do you want to talk about that?
Imagine that. Yeah, really. So the embassy actually, in fact, they did not even know it had been hit and overrun. They were trying to contact them, and for whatever reason, back in 1979, whatever type of communications they had, they were trying to get it from the BBC, UPI, AP, and they were the ones that were saying, "Hey, Washington,
happening.
Your embassy's on fire over there. Yeah, you can't talk to your ambassador. Do you know that the American flags have been taken down? The embassy's burning. Yeah, might want to check that out." And see, of course, I didn't know any of this because I was taken off to the hospital, and then from the hospital kidnapped out, and taken to that hellhole called Avon Prison, and that's something. If you want to Google that and look and see what the history of that is, it'll change your lifestyle. It's places where in the book where I talk about having to kind of come up with a different name for some of these people.
Yes.
Because I couldn't speak Farsi. I know I talk about, Torquemada, and then you look at that's the Spanish Inquisition. That's how far it goes back of what you were saying to watching other people be tortured in such inhumane ways. I said, first of all, who thinks this stuff up?
What kind of mindset do you have to make it okay for you to do that to people?
I've never,
I don't know either, thankfully.
And then to, keep these people alive long enough for whether you wanted information from them, I don't know, whether you just want to be mean and revenge, tactics.
At some point, they can't speak, and yet they're still being beaten and tortured. So it's like, what's the point?
It's hideous. And
can't imagine.
They're doing this to their own people. Now imagine me, a combat Marine who just, got in a fair firefight, and we killed a bunch of them, and now they're going to take it out on me. So whatever I'm watching here, I'm going to get just as much or worse. And I was already wounded, already beat, and bones broken, and so I hadn't had anything to eat or sleep in 2 days.
Yes.
So, stripped naked, and you're looking at these days, how much more can you take?
You talk about how it didn't matter what they were going to do to you. And I think at the end of your sentence was just, I'm a Marine. Like that ended your sentence. And I was like, oh, it's so touched me. I felt like that. I could feel the energy behind that sentence. So I'm wondering, how did you feel like you were prepared enough for what you went through? How can you prepare really? But no matter what you were going to experience, you were still going to stand by being a Marine.
Absolutely. And it all comes down to, I knew that nobody knows where I was.
Yeah, you gave them some truths and some lies to confuse the heck out of them.
They stripped me naked. I have no ID. I can't, no dog tags ID, nothing. So here I am down in this hellhole. I don't know what happened to the embassy. You're inside, and you get this time deprivation because you don't get fed on a regular basis at all. You don't see light whatsoever, so you never know. When you fall asleep, you literally pass out.
Yes.
Was I out for a week, a month, a day? And it didn't
matter. It didn't
matter.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes down to it, and you realize that I'm not going to get out of this situation, and you go back to why you joined the Marine Corps, and your core value is inside, and you say I signed up. I'm an American fighting man. I'm a United States Marine. I serve in the forces that guard our country and our way of life. I'm prepared to risk and give my life in their defense. And that's what you look at when you look at a blank wall. There's no mirror, and you just say, okay, however it's going to be, they can beat me up, they can kill me, and they can eat me, and that's the worst they can do. And you just have to accept that because there was nothing else. You're in a position where there's even no hope that you want to keep the hopes open, but you say hope for what? Because then you try to be logical. Nobody knows where you're at, and there's no way to, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Who knows what's going to happen to you in the meantime?
And I said, basically getting no medical attention whatsoever. I know my wounds are going to go septic. I'm going to die here. I know it's just the thing that bothered me the most is that when I had to accept that with a spiritual relationship, I just had to say that I asked the Lord to say, there's one thing I just really wanted to get across is that I know that, whether I just die here or whether they, execute me, whatever it's going to be, is that they can take me out here and put my picture in the newspapers like they have with so many others, and they can accuse me of all kinds of heinous crimes, ugly things, and as can imagine what kind of crimes that they could accuse me of. And as an American, as a Marine in the Marine Corps, and my family, they would have no closure on that. Say there would be no defense in it whatsoever,
You wanted them to know the truth.
And I just want to say, hey, if you're going to kill me, then I'm going to go out and just as a fighting man and just leave it at that. And he was a Marine that died in the defense of the country. And if that's all that I wanted, the Lord to say, because I know I'm not getting out of here. So if that could be in my epitaph or whatever was left in my body, even if they gave the body back, I don't know. But please don't embarrass me or my family's name. And already there's been enough things from Vietnam, and we're just 5 years later, so we don't need any more of this.
Yeah, you wanted to die with honor if it was going to happen.
Rightfully so.
Pretty much.
It makes me wonder how many Marines or military don't, because they don't have that opportunity, or maybe not don't, but no one really knows their story. No one really knows their mindset. And there must be so many.
Especially the ones that go deep undercover in operations that we never hear about, and they when they don't come home, sometimes you can't even give them the accolades. You can't even talk about it. No medals conferred, and the family just said it's a training accident, or they never recover the body back. Didn't
you say in the book that the two men that you were with in the restaurant, you didn't see them again after a certain point?
Never saw them again.
So we don't know.
Well, I have talked to one. We found him. He's up he retired, and he's up in New England, and he just wants to have a quiet life, and no accolades or anything.
But that was the first time you had talked to him since you saw a gun to his head as you were being carried out.
Yeah.
Got you.
That was when
It was in my office too.
Yeah.
Oh, you're kidding me.
Yeah, we did the call in my office and we filmed it. We're gonna put some snippets of that conversation on YouTube.
Can't imagine what that was like.
I was in tears.
How could you not be? How could you? There are only a few people on the planet who know what that was like.
Exactly.
To be in. What do you think people have a misconception about during your time that you were a hostage, but also in the ensuing months, 144 days, I believe it was, that they were, or
444 days, 14 months,
excuse me.
Yes.
Yep.
And, well, for one, is that the media itself doesn't go back and follow it. Take a look at just yesterday, Pearl Harbor. There was hardly a mention on media out there.
My goodness, I didn't even think of that. You're right.
Exactly. They don't teach it in the schools anymore. How often are they still talking about the hostages? It was 52 hostages. What happened to them? I can name most of them, and I know the ones that have committed suicide and the ones that have passed away naturally. And they don't teach it in the schools. So part of the misconception is that it goes away, and that that's never going to happen again. Well, just a few years ago, they attacked the same way in Benghazi, and some of the very politicians that were there. What does it matter? It mattered a lot of people when they drug the United States ambassador naked, yes, through the streets. See what I mean? So when you don't remember those things, you are bound to commit the same problems or get into the same problems and end up with same similar solutions. So that's the misconception, is that these people won't attack, and they will attack. They will attack again. They don't attack Russian embassies. They don't attack Chinese embassies. Why is that? Just their misperception? Nah, because they don't show up with a SWAT team. They'll show up with about 8 divisions just annex your country. So there's a bigger fear over there than
they don't mess around over there.
They don't mess around. No, they bring the heat. And that's not always the best answer, but sometimes violence and military operations is necessary. For instance, Normandy invasion, D-Day. They don't even talk about that much. It's the largest, greatest invasion in military history and human history, and some people don't even.
Well, and the potential lives that it did save, right? Yeah. By ending.
Was there any other way to get rid of Hitler?
You can't solve terrorism with hugs. It's just not, right. It's just not a thing.
So when you came back and you were released, you were given the Cross of Valor in 1979, and you were given the Purple Heart and a Navy Commendation Medal. What was that like for you?
That was amazing, Sharon, because I learned about the medals on my flight over here. I mean, my flight from Germany when I was evac'd out. We went to Germany, stayed overnight. They looked at my wounds, and they had to find a uniform for me and everything. And then on the flight, I was briefed about what would happen. And I was saying, well, that's amazing. And where's the other Marines? Because I'd never talked to anyone of them since then. Mm-hmm. And I said, how about the other accolades that they're going to be getting? And when am I going to see them? He said, well, that's the officer that was briefing me had said that it was. I said, that's above our pay grade. We don't discuss that. Mm. So he said, that this is an oncoming election year, and that just people, when you get off this plane, here's what to expect.
Their cameras and everything.
Here's the dog and pony show.
Oh my God! I mean, it was
picture of you hugging your mom.
Iconic. But to actually, when you look at the book and you see the photos of the entire Marine 8th and I band out there, the president's own. And, for them to stand at attention and the band to play, and for you to get a salute like that from them, and to walk down that ramp knowing that, 72 hours ago, I was minutes away from death. I was doomed to be executed in a firing squad. And now I'm here. I said, is this real? You keep biting your cheek. You say, how does this happen? I said, usually, when you meet the commandant, you go through the whole dog and pony show, Senator John Hines, Secretary of the Navy, Graham Claytor, all of them there, all have, to salute them, put the pin on you, read the citation, and you wonder, you say, usually when soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, any kind of veteran does something like this, they vet them first, and they check it out, and they say, hey, we want to see everything that's involved, who else is involved, et cetera, et cetera. How they went from not knowing where I was in that hellhole down there to whirlwind overnight. Now they can come up with this entourage of this. What's going on here? I mean, it is overwhelming. It really is. And to know that you never got any decent sleep or medication, anything like that. And the stitches that were in my chest and my stomach, when my mom ran up to me, I could just barely hold on to her. And I go, oh, my God, when I picked her up, you could see it's not a normal stance. I had to separate my boots to hold my back up. Because otherwise I said, oh, there goes my stitches. Oh, God. But
you just finally got them in. They had taped you together the day before,
That was it. And, I said, come all the way back here to, die on the tarmac with a hug from your mom.
Yeah, bunch of cameras.
What a way to go out.
No kidding. Yeah.
So, Constance, I would love to talk to you about how you and Ken got to know each other. There's a restaurant that's sort of military themed restaurant here in Woodstock called Semper Fi.
Yes. Now they're Rally Point, and they're moving just up the road as we speak, I think, actually, right, Ken?
That's right.
But yeah, we met there on February 1st of this year. It's just
got chit-chatting. Got to chit-chatting.
Well, I was sitting at the end of the bar, and I had just gotten from having a beer and a burger. And from a Disabled American Veterans convention or meeting. Anyway, so I had taken my book bag, which tells you how old I am, and I put it on the chair next to me, and all the other chairs were taken. And Constance came in, and she looked around. She asked, is that seat taken? I said, oh, no, ma'am, be my guest. I said, let me move my book bag. And she kind of giggled, book bag, grandpa, things like, nobody carries book bags. But because I was working.
Well, he had this silly look on his face, too. He's like, please sit next to me.
So I moved my, quote, book bag that had the books in it that I was working on at the time, or at least thinking working on it, the research. And she said, don't you mean a computer bag? I said, yeah, it's got a computer in it, but I'm writing a book. And she goes, oh, you're writing a book? And boom. Because she's had experience in that and has been an author and a publisher. I said, oh, what's the odds of that right there, Yeah,
and then we talked about forensics and stuff like that, because he went on to be a forensic detective
at
after
the Roswell
Marine Corps.
Police Department. I saw until 2016.
She had shown me pictures, and we were showing, photos back and forth. She owns her own forensic cleanup.
Yes,
I had just come from a cleanup. I kind of normally do that. Like I'll go to, just to
decompress.
Yeah, decompress. And, I like to sit around, people that are respectful and honorable. And he was the first person to ever talk to me in that bar in the year that I had been going there after work. And so I was like, this little guy's got some balls. It was hilarious. So I usually go there just to get, a moment to myself, but I enjoyed our conversation, and we just kind of gave the synopsis of our lives, and we totally broed out. It's kind of an odd friendship. I'm 37, he's 66.
But think about how just even being in the forensics world, how you all can compare, bringing out, looking at your
your battle wounds. Yeah, it's here you go.
I got this gun, fight and this. Blah, blah, blah. I just can't imagine what it was like to talk about things that only the two of you in that kind of.
You
space.
Don't often meet somebody that you see eye to eye with.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially right off the bat about so many different topics. So it was a good conversation for sure.
And that led to.
The book. Yes.
So, Constance, you have, first of all, just the most cool person ever on the planet. I'm just such a fan. Actor, forensics cleaner, of course. But I didn't even know that you had a publishing side. So you have done some publishing for other authors in the past.
Yes. I used to work for third-party companies in my early 20s when I was actually doing radio.
Yeah, that's right. You have a great voice for radio.
Thank you. That's kind of what got me into that. It was really random. I was working at a biker bar, and the old lady that owned it wanted me to give these tickets away for her concert or whatever. So I didn't know that you just call the sales department. Like I had no idea. I'm like 21 years old, and so I just kept calling up the DJ, and I started doing my funny voices and just being like, "Hey, give these tickets away," and that kind of led into radio.
Amazing.
But I attribute both of those aspects into being a successful actor, because I understand my voice, how to throw it, and then character development, what it really means, especially in book publishing. Like, people can publish all they want. If you don't have a page turner, you're not going to get good reviews. People aren't going to continue to buy it. They're not going to recommend it or anything like that. And so helping to create and craft that through, interviews with him that were verbal and his notes, and just meshing those things together to make it what it was. And then in the final publishing process, seeing him go through page after page, because I said, all right, Maureen,
let's read it.
You got to read this, and you got to read it and criticize it. If I've missed something or I messed something up, now's the time. And he just kept page after page. He's like, great. And it was a very emotional experience. It took about 4 hours for him to go through the whole book and really eyeline it.
I was going to ask you as well, like, what is it like as in your 60s, going back to your 22-year-old mindset? Like, how did it feel? Did you realize things differently?
I don't think he's ever matured past 22.
I haven't either. We're kindred spirits then, because I am totally not my chronological age. I think I'm Arrested Development.
Go ahead, answer that one, Ken. I had to step on you on that.
In reflection, you look at it and you're thinking, the stuff that you went through, that you saw, how does it affect your life now? And then you stop for a second. You realize it's a continuing process that you become. Specifically, myself, I had created an alter ego, and I didn't realize that, and it suffered in some of the jobs that I wanted to go for. For instance, air traffic controller, which I was in the military, my first MOS, my first job before I went on embassy duty. And then I just knew I wasn't going to be able to take the stress and have people's lives again sitting in a dark room for 20 years. That and a couple of divorces where you realize this alter ego is something that I'm never going to be a hostage again. That's something you say, hey, I'm not going to be a hostage, financially. I'm not to your emotions. And I had a hard time with people giving me, I wouldn't say direction, but ultimatums. I said, it's not going to be that way. It's my way or the highway. And I said, I'm not going to be put into a corner. And I'm always out trying to think people. That was, what was your initial emotional thought process when you contacted me about something? What is your intent?
What's your motive?
Yeah, what's your
motive and your intent?
What do you want from me?
Exactly. And it was not paranoia, but it was what I didn't want to call it paranoia. I just wanted to call it heightened awareness, super sensitive.
Being cautious, I do the same thing.
And you're very guarded in your feelings and letting people in. And then even then, when you share, it's not complete. It's just enough to get them to feel comfortable with you. And going on with that, that's the emotional part and the mental. Then there's the physical, where you would you hear a certain music or sound, certain smells that would bother me, and curry and things like that. Oh, I love curry, but its way it's cooked, and it brings back memories.
It's visceral, right? It's like
absolutely.
Yeah.
Sometimes when I see people from the Middle East and dressed in their cultural garb, I look at them, and it wasn't too long ago where I saw one. A female and not a full burqa, but half of it with at least a chador is what we call it, and you could definitely tell that they were from the Middle East, and pushing her cart in Walmart. I come around the corner, and it would never bother me any other day. I don't know why it bothered me that day. I just looked at her, and the first thought came in my mind is that, does she have a baby in that little stroller, or does she have a bomb in there? Who in their right mind thinks like that? I don't get out of bed, hating people or loving them any way, which way, shape, or form. But it's something like that, and you look at them, and I didn't want to walk by her. I didn't know what her face looked like or if she had a baby in that carriage. I just turned my buggy around. I said, oh, we'll come back down this aisle another time.
I think it's so interesting how PTSD in itself is so unreasonable. Like you can tell yourself you're safe. You can tell yourself there's nothing there's no reason why you should feel what you're feeling, but it is like completely irrational responses, but they're still very real. You know, the sights and the sounds and the smells, all of those things I can imagine can bring you right back to a place of fight or flight.
Yeah, and then other days they don't bother you.
Yeah,
You know, you've got good days and bad days, and
why?
that's
Right.
Why does your brain do that?
If you knew something that triggers you, you stay away from it, okay? Not so much. But sometimes in your subconscious, things will just pop in, especially in your sleep. You know, you say, you know, why do you wake up screaming? You know, why are you sweating like, you know, so bad? And sometimes you don't know. And then it'll keep you awake for a while. And you say, now this is, instead of having a nice, you know, slumber sleep and waking up refreshed, ready to do your itinerary for the next day, it's now interrupted. That has now changed your lifestyle. And you know you're going to be a little cranky. You know you're going to put some Bailey.
You know why?
You're going to put some Baileys in your coffee.
Sounds like a plan.
No kidding.
So you were in the Marine Corps until 1986, and I think it was from 95 until 2016. You were a detective with the Roswell Police Department here in Georgia. How did your experience impact your being a detective?
That's interesting because I've often thought myself is that why would you go back in and do something so stressful, something that there's so much a high level of liability nowadays, and dangerous, you know, at dangerous at times, and it boiled down to saying, what drew me into it was I went to work for the Department of Energy, a nuclear SWAT officer. We transport nuclear materials around the country, long story short. And through that, working and going to conventions and going to SWAT competitions, I met people in the law enforcement, civilian part of the field. I moved here to Atlanta. So, you know, when I hooked up with the Roswell Police Department, it didn't take me long at all from going from foot soldier, uniformed police to a detective. I just had natural instincts about it, and I focused on it. And I really liked forensics at the time. The O.J. Simpson trial from 94, 95, the CSI. Before that, people didn't know what CSI was.
Know, right?
They couldn't even spell it. And then 2 years later, you got every city city, you know, in America's got it, you know.
A CSI department.
Yeah,
yes.
exactly. You know, so and plus the technology is coming out. DNA was now out there for everybody to look at, and they started vetting fingerprints and some of the disciplines in CSI, and it was long overdue, and I'm glad it did. So
and you
now,
were there for all of that.
Oh, absolutely. So with that saying is that I'm saying people ask me, I said, I just wanted to continue to serve. I felt like the rug was pulled out from under me, and I never went back on embassy duty, and that wherever I went after embassy duty, I would always have a stigma. It's like, hey, you know who he is? You know who he is? And it's, yeah, my name's Ken Kraus. I'm now a staff sergeant. I said, but, as I move along, but you're always going to have that stigma of being the person at that time when it went down. So when that stopped and I got out of the Marine Corps, it was, I still had a hole in my life where I didn't have a job or I didn't have an identity to be something where I'm still serving the public. And it just fell into being a forensic detective, and I was good at it. And, I'm not so much of an author, but a lot of people still come to me with things saying, how would you do it this way? And how would you work, this type of crime scene?
Wait, I heard a rumor that you once got a fingerprint off of a grape.
That's true. And I wrote in a forensic magazine. I wrote the synopsis of how that happened. Captured a burglar
from a grape.
Yep, from a grape. Yeah,
that's incredible. You were good at it.
He was hanging out with this grape for what, like a week? It was your little buddy
absolutely.
grape.
I had one grape, and it was called the Lunchtime Bandit. And they nicknamed him that because he was going from Roswell, Alpharetta, Sandy Springs. He's like a cat burglar. He would case the place, very professional, and he'd make entry, usually without damaging to anything. And he would go in, and he had a knack for looking at women's jewelry and telling the difference between the good stuff and the costume stuff. And he wouldn't wreck the place. He'd just take what he needed, and usually he would make himself a sandwich, or he'd have something to eat out of your refrigerator, leave it there, and when you come back to work from home, you go, who the heck's been in my house? It was, anyway, so what happened is that a young lady had a mother had left her some fruit out on the table for her daughter who lived right near the Roswell High School. And she usually comes home for lunch, walks across the street, whatever, and has lunch or something like that. Well, that day she has something to do with in school, high school, and she didn't get over there for that day. Okay, well, he had just happened to hit that house, and the mother didn't realize when she came home, okay, because some of the fruit had been eaten. When anyway, she talked to her daughter and said, "Oh yeah, did you like that fruit today we had today, et cetera? Oh, Mom, I didn't get a chance to come home. I'm sorry, whatever." She said, "What? So
who's been in my house?
who's been eating my porridge?" Right? So she called the police, and anyway, so they initiated. And she goes, "Yep, sure enough, there's been said somebody's been in here, and this is missing." So she started making a list of what's missing. She goes, "Man, we've been robbed." I said, "Burglarized," but same. It's technically. So my sergeant asked me to go over, and I sat down. There's nothing I could do. No evidence, no fingerprints, nothing. I mean, it was forensically naked, is what we called it. But then the next day, when she was cleaning in her kitchen, she had underneath, I think it was the stove or the refrigerator, she saw a grape. And she went to pick the grape up, and she said, "Oh, wait a minute. Somebody touched that grape." And it wasn't her, and it wasn't her daughter. So she called my sergeant and got through to him and was telling him about this. And he said, "Okay, ma'am, don't touch it." So he calls me to his office, and he says, "You know how to get fingerprints off of a grape?" And I'm sitting down thinking, is this a punchline, or, I'm waiting for the joke here. And he goes, "No." And he tells me what he had. I said, "Well, that's going to be a new one on me." So I went over there, and I sure enough, and I captured the grape, photographed it.
Captured the grape.
And took it into custody.
With little grape handcuffs.
I'm making you say, and I'm going to make you whine.
Oh my gosh, that was a dad joke. Nice.
It comes with the territory. Anyway, it says. Anyway, so we said, "Well, what's the possibility of this?" And I said, "I don't know." So I contacted people at GBI and FBI, and nobody knows. And he goes, "We better hurry up because that grape's going to turn into a raisin after so long, And so what I did is went and got similar type of grapes from the grocery store and tried different forensic mechanics on it. And what worked out best was that it was to use cyanoacrylate, which is basically a fumant with super glue, is what happens. And it sticks. But then when you try to take a photograph of it, you're not going to be able to peel that grape off to use it, the skin. So basically, when you would try to photograph it, it was
show.
So, but it would if you used fluorescent fingerprint powder. Okay.
Interesting.
And then under certain nanometers of ultraviolet light, it was able to be photographed with a special lens. And photographers that been through that, they'll realize under a certain light, and it glowed, and it was beautiful, and it gave me it looked just like, I can almost tell you what two fingers he used, but on the side of that grape.
Did you catch this guy,
ma'am?
You caught the guy.
Well, what happens is we get the fingerprint and we run it through the APHIS machine,
Yes.
And basically it's not like what you see on television. It's where these two patterns,
Yeah, they match.
And they match like, I wish I had that.
It looks fun to look at.
Yeah, really.
Hollywood. Anyway, but to get that and then to put it on a digital mat and run it through, you get a list of potential fingerprint.
Narrows it down.
Narrows it down. So you say, "No, this one's not here. He doesn't live here. This one, he passed away. This one's still incarcerated. How about these two?" And then after those two, they go, "Oh yeah, run his rap sheet. And what do you think? What do you think's been burglary, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera."
I wonder who it could be.
So then we take the fingerprint and we give it for peer review, and we said, "Okay, we send it to the GBI and tell them nothing about it. Let them run it the same way." Boom. Who do you think they come back with?
Oh, you are kidding.
Let's try it one more time. Send it to the FBI. Boom. They come back. So we're 3 for 3.
Yes.
It's enough to get a warrant, and then out it goes. And
Look at you. Look at what you did.
Yeah, got lucky.
Think about this, though. You have a spirit to serve and help, whether it's within the military or within the police department, and helping people feel safe.
Absolutely.
That's part of who you are.
It's a very rewarding attribute, and I'm glad I'm lucky and I'm blessed to have it. But,
People and puppies.
Yeah.
He loves his
Really?
dogs. Yes. He saves animals all the time. When I was going through his Facebook and checking it out, I just was like, oh, you're like this. I never looked at your whole timeline before. It's nothing but puppy dogs and military memes.
I look at them and I see them in their cage, and I've been in a cage, so I can feel for them, And so it's I'll take them home, and I'll find them. I'll work with one, and then find them a foster home like that, a forever home, and then we'll go back and do it again.
What are you hoping will happen as a result of this book?
Actually, I want to get this out, and I would like to see it, in a production mode, in a movie. And I don't know who the heck would play me, but I mean,
Brad Pitt for sure.
Yeah, I mean, he's gonna have to be a young guy.
I know, right?
Yeah, and to get it out and to let people see what it's like to go through a trial of fire and hell, and not give up on anything. Because when you read the book, there's at least 7 different areas there of miracles, and in the end of the book, you'll see it says miracles. Believe in them. If any one of those events, if you want to call them, okay, ironic events, happen a different way, the world would be different for me, and I wouldn't be here. So just the timing of exactly those things that happened, what could have went wrong, what didn't go wrong, and what specifically had to happen for this domino effect to go positive, it's all miracle after miracle after miracle. And if you don't believe that, then it's you got an emptiness in you.
Well, you lived it.
Absolutely.
You know it.
So, I mean, I have faith now. I mean, you can hope for things like that, but you have to have the faith of, like what they said in the Bible, of a mustard seed. You have to know it's going to grow and nurture it, believe it, see it, make it happen, live it, smell it, act it, and there's no downside to that whatsoever. It's just a matter of the clock ticking and the world spinning. Just a matter of time.
What does it cost you? What does it cost you to have that attitude?
I just can't imagine not having hope. I mean, at one point there, I knew that I could figure out all the logical ways that that no one's going to know I was there, and if it is my fate, then that's why I went, and I prayed that, hey, just send the body back home. Don't make a mess of it, and don't lie about me. Just say, hey, he came over here, he stuck his nose in where it don't belong. He was an invader. Call me what you want. Everybody know I was a Marine and I died in the line of duty. But as long as they went out with, like Constance said, with a degree of honor, they say, and that's what the long blue line of Marine Corps has. I mean, that's our fighting spirit. That's our traditional heritage, the way it is. And the baton was passed to me that day, and I'm just glad I didn't drop it.
Constance, do you ever think the serendipity, the moment of meeting, and how that leads you? Well, this has happened in so many different times of your life. It is kind of crazy when you think about it. It's like that is your theme, but you also are a go-getter. Like, you saw an opportunity to really help this man, and now here you are. In the studio,
and now here we are doing it.
Yeah,
Pushing it forward and keeping going. It's like I needed this friendship in my life at this time throughout this whole last year just as much as he did. And being able to be a part of telling his story and helping to produce it is it's been amazing. I'm very thankful. Like, and I do see like a future in a movie potential on it. I helped design and lay out the book just to start with the firefight, go back and forth with his memories and stuff like that. So it is that page turner that we were talking about earlier, and not just, your typical biography where I was born on this day.
And then this happened.
Yeah. And then we have to get, 5 chapters in to figure anything out.
You refer to your father often, Ken, in the book about kind of how that relationship informed the different thought processes you had during your time as a hostage, and some of these really very deeply spiritual moments, but to not have the context of that, it doesn't impact the same way. So I appreciate that you went back into his history.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing is when he was, giving me his writings and stuff like that, and I was looking over him, he would hand some stuff over to me, and he'd be like, you're not going to think any different of me. I just finished some of this prison stuff. And I was like, no, man, like I see a lot and I've been through a lot in my life. And when I was shaping the book out, what was the hardest part for me was the love he had for his father. That was the hardest part. All the torture stuff, all that, like that didn't bother. I mean, it's a horrible thing, but, just saying like what bothered me the most was, the fact that he loved his father so much and I never had that in my life. I wish I could have said that, or at least had one parent that I could have said that about. And it was, that was a sad part for him to lose his father at 16.
Yes.
But he's always with you in spirit.
He is, and he speaks to you.
For
you
sure.
hear him. You hear him.
You can hear it. I mean, people say, no, that's not a voice. You can hear a voice, but it's a deep inner impact of you feel it and hear it at the same time. It's almost like telepathy, I think, it's coming from outside. You sense it as much as when you talk to yourself and you have to make a list of things you have to do today. You hear yourself talking about it. I mean, that's normal. But then to hear somebody else, like your father or somebody close talking to you, say, wow. And they are changing the aspect of the issues. And
because you would have chosen differently.
Exactly.
There's one point in the book where you hear him say to you, pray, son, pray for what your heart wants most in the situation. Believe it, see it, know it, command it, and it shall be. That was so moving to me. In the very first day of what was happening to you, you felt your father and you heard those words and the comfort that you got from that.
And that's where when I in the caravanserai, I was in the bathroom, and I said, "Hey, it's the deepest thing I've ever asked for in my life," And then went from him to actually prayer to to the Lord. And I said, "This is it. I can't ask for anything else. I can't buy this. I can't rent this. There's no other way to earn this. It just has to be given as a gift." And when he comes by and says, you have to believe it, but you have to believe in yourself and you have to know what do you want most. And that's when I said, you know what, I'll sacrifice my life for the other 20.
Let me just get all these people out of here.
Yeah, they don't deserve this. And when in the book where I'm talking to the other two Marines and we're realizing, that one more assault and we're going to be out of ammo and it's going to be hand to hand. And he said, they're going to slaughter these people back here. And they were standing right there in the corner, and a couple of them overheard it. Now, how embarrassing do you think that is? I mean, I didn't realize, in the environment there, that these people just realized, that their lives are in our hands. As soon as we die, they're coming minutes later, and that's not something I could deal with. So whatever it took, to every spiritual realm, or to even call about my dad, is when he said, what do you got for me? How can you get me out of this? I mean, help me.
Do you mind if I quickly talk about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict that is happening right now? Do you mind if we talk about it briefly?
No, ma'am.
How does your experience being a hostage and really understanding the conflicts that happened during that time, how does that inform your understanding and your opinion about what's happening right now?
Opinions are tough because I've been through Israel several times. I've trained with some of their military. I see some of the terrorism that they face. There's always going to be a political point of view that you have countries, like Iran, state sponsored. You have Syria, you have Lebanon. They all have their identity as a country. They got a flag, they got a government, they got a culture, And for the last 50 something years, the place where they call Palestine, it really never existed. It was, and the historical value of it, people won't take it into context. They just assume that somebody's stealing their land. Well, it's basically all those other countries that use them, the Palestinians, as cannon fodder, and you'll see that the other countries are now basically at a impromptu, or say a de facto section of war, and they're not fighting against Israel. But yet you get these political terrorists like the Hamas and the Hezbollah. They take over a country, and they're literally running it. And they're going to run it right into the ground. And they'll use them to fight and kill the Israelis over the land that no one wants to go back to work out in an amicable way for both sides. If you don't go back to the beginning of how it got there, all you're going to do is keep kicking that can down the road. And with Hamas and Hezbollah, you can see what they do. They attack and they attack, and they teach their children, how to die and how to be martyrs. Israeli children, they don't learn that. That's not what they learn. And with that being said, is that you'll look at the Hamas goes into the area in Gaza, and do they build them roads or schools? And no, they don't. They'll build them some mosques, not it. But the roads, hospitals, no, they don't build them. You see the little kids running around learning how to throw stones and learning how to hate the Israelis and how to hate everybody else and anybody that supports Israel. So, that just, and there's always a lull. You'll see every few years, you had the 56 Sinai War, then you had the 67-day war, and you had the 73 Yom Kippur War, and then the 83 up there in Tafra, up in Lebanon. And it's just, it's
cycle.
Mm-hmm. And you get a terrorist type organization that is run by state sponsored, and we know that Hezbollah comes from Iran. And now what Iran's trying to do, build a nuke. Now they get their hands on nuclear material, nuclear weapon. What is the first country you think they're going to use it on? Mm-hmm. I'll let you take a guess with that one. Exactly. So if you don't watch them and keep a leash on them, it can get out of hand somewhere where 9/11 is going to look like a picnic, God forbid, compared to a small tactical nuke put somewhere. And there's only about 3 cities in Israel. I mean, that's about it. I don't think that they would deliberately do it to Jerusalem, because that's a very holy place for a lot of religions. But Tel Aviv, Ashdod, there's any one of them could go. So you got to keep an alert on it. And if people would go back and look at where the brunt of this started, I think that they'll be able to admit what the truth is, and it would take a lot of the hate and that is fomented by outside agencies like Hamas and Hezbollah, and take them out of the equation. And when you do that, you're going to find people that are basically back to their Bible, their basic roots of Islam, basic roots of being Hebrew, and knowing that they can get along. And when they can get along, then they don't have to fight like they're doing today. But you ignore it, you're going to have to pay that bill again every few years.
It's interesting, too, because what you're talking about is taking away all of the political aspects of it, but looking at people as just the humans that they are, which is, I think, what you're so good at in the book with you and Constance together, writing it in a way that helps to really humanize something that we can talk about in a Wikipedia way, but we're talking about the human aspect of it. And hopefully that will encourage just a great deal of compassion and understanding and a willingness to look at everyone as just humans, which is what we are on the planet, not just people who are trying to win, or use their force or don't care if anyone suffers.
That's right.
So I really appreciate your being willing to be so vulnerable in the book as well with me today. And Constance, thank you so much for helping him to write this book.
Absolutely.
And I can't wait to see where it'll go. Ken, Kraus, thank you so much for coming into Business RadioX and sharing your story. If anyone wanted to get in touch with you or Constance Payne, what would be the best way?
You're going to want to go to www.kenkraus.com. You could always shoot an email to ken@kenkraus.com for any type of media or book signings, or, that's what we're really looking at right now, is where can we get Ken at any other events that are, so we can, set up a book table and have him be able to sign his autographs and sign his books for his fans.
Excellent. Well, if there's any way I can help you, I would love to.
You've done so much today is a healing. Every time I can sit and talk and let people appreciate what I've gone through, it's one more inch that I healed. Thank you, Sharon.
Well, my goodness. Thank you. It's an honor. Thank you so much. And thank you all for listening to Fearless Formula on Business RadioX. And again, this is Sharon Klein reminding you, with knowledge and understanding, we can all have our own fearless formula. Have a great day.